The Sunday before last, our first reading came from the 31st chapter of the book of the prophet Jeremiah. And in that reading, God spoke to Jeremiah to announce that there would be a new covenant. God promised to write his law on people's hearts, and that all from the least to the greatest would know him. Tonight we heard St. Paul in our second reading describing the Last Supper. He quotes Jesus saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood." In the Last Supper, Jesus is bringing into reality that new covenant which Jeremiah had written about some 600 years before. God's covenant with Abraham was a covenant with the chosen people. It set the people of ancient Israel apart as the particular people to whom God has revealed himself, the nation that received God's self-revelation. And through that covenant relationship, God's chosen people recognize the Lord's presence with them, but also their responsibility to live according to God's teachings and commands. That covenantal status, that responsibility was passed from one generation to the next, passed, we might say, passed along by blood, with the circumcision of boys on the 8th day being the sign of that covenant. With the new covenant, we have the Son of God with us. We have Jesus, and he expands who can be part of it. Now it's no longer a covenant limited to a chosen people, no longer limited to one nation. Now it is made available to all. God promises to be our God, and we promise to be his people, following his teaching and his commands. The new covenant is marked not by circumcision, but is instead made real through blood. Not by blood, not your blood, not the blood of any normal human, but rather the blood of Jesus. Every time we come forward to receive his body and blood in Holy Communion, we renew our acceptance of that covenant. We are expressing at that moment our desire to be and to live as God's people. We renew our acceptance of God's covenant whenever we receive the Eucharist. And at the same time, in receiving the Eucharist, we proclaim the death of the Lord until he comes, to use the words of St. Paul. This proclamation announces the good news of what Jesus has done for us. And it makes the work of salvation present for us here and now. Tonight, this Holy Thursday night, we celebrate the Eucharist and Jesus' gift of that Eucharist to us. We will end tonight's Mass with a procession of the Eucharist around the church. Before that, many of you will come forward for communion. As you do, please remember that you are renewing your acceptance of God's covenant, and in fact promising also to live your part in it.